Hi there everyone, and welcome to Fingers, Fums and Fits. In today's episode of TTPITL, I will be painting this artillery witch for Trench Crusade, designed by Papsikels, and supplied by We Print Miniatures. Can I keep the paint inside the lines? Let's find out. I start off by applying a base coat of Chaos Black spray, and then added some highlights. First, with a heavy dry brush of Eshin Grey, followed by a slightly lighter dry brush of Dark Reaper, and then a light tickle with Dawnstone. I gave her helmet a light dusting of Screaming Bell, followed by Balthasar Gold, and then Stormhost Silver. And then added some contrast on her skirt and cloak with Nuln Oil. It was at this point I realized she was wearing tassets, so I painted these in the same way as the helmet. I also did this to her corset too, as I thought it kinda looked like it might have been armored, but also, to break up the black a little. However, this armor looks way too shiny. So it got a wash with a Grax Earthshade. Twice. I then built up the highlight on her bombs, before applying a 1-to-1 mix of Warp Lightning and a Grax Earthshade. Again, I applied 2 coats of this. And whilst that was drying, I added a few highlights to her clothes with Dawnstone. And painted those dangly, tassel-like adornments with Luxion Purple. Before I gave her a weird skin tone. Firstly by painting her arms with Grey Seal. And then gave them 2 coats of a 1-to-1 mix of Eshin Grey, War Flesh, and Contrast Medium. But now, it's time for a bit of capillary action on those bomb sigils, which could go very well, or very badly. This is where we heavily water down some paint so they are about the consistency of inks, and then drop them into recesses and just let the paint flow. Starting with White Scar. I then did the same with Dorn Yellow, Wild Rider Red, and Evil Sun Scarlet, with each paint further from the center of the sigil, to give a cooling fiery effect. And then tied it all together with a wash of Gryph-hound Orange, just to add a little more warmth. But this looks proper messy, right? So let's tidy it up a bit, by first applying a little Abaddon Black around the edges of the sigils, followed by Eshin Grey, and finally Warpstone Glow. And guess what? I found more armor. So, I painted her boots in the same way as the rest of her armor, as well as the fins on the bombs, applying Stormhost Silver where necessary. Now, time to paint all that smoke. And to start, I laid down a layer of Dawnstone, which was then dry brushed with Grey Seer. And then, for reasons unknown to even me, I decided to wash all of the smoke with Ether Matic Blue. Maybe I was going for a mystical look? Anyway, my advice here is, if you want to do this, thin this wash down with a medium first, else it will be quite overpowering. As you can see here. So, to try and recover from this experiment, I dry brushed the smoke again with Dawnstone, and then some Corax White higher up, before rewashing it with Space Wolves Grey. I then began to base the model. However, I wasn't bothered about any of these paints splashing up against the sides of the smoke, as I was hoping it might integrate it into the base a little. And so I began with Armageddon Dust, which I then painted with Mournfang Brown, along with a bit of dirt she's standing on, and any areas of the base I thought looked like bits of ground. These areas then got a wash of Seraphim Sepia, followed by Reikland Flesh Shade. These washes were also applied to the lower layer of the smoke on the base. Before the base, the projected bits of ground, and the lower layer of smoke were roughly dry brushed with Xandri Dust. And all that was left to do was paint the rim. Now, I think I rescued that as best as I could without reapplying another base layer, but I want to know what you guys think. Did I manage to keep the paint inside the lines? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again for the next one. Have a great day everyone, and I'll see you later.